Welcome to the ACC Panic Room alongside Lauren Brownlow. I'm Joe Ovies. And would you like to form an alliance, Brownlow, with me?
Not sure how powerful it would be.
I mean, I guess we kind of have one with the ACC Panic Room, and it has a decent enough following, right?
That's true. I mean, like as ACC alliances go, I don't know.
So, in the wake of the SEC adding Texas and Oklahoma, and kind of the mask being ripped off of SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey as it relates to the college football playoff expansion, Nicole Auerbach of The Athletic, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, reported on a potential alliance between the Atlantic Coast Conference, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12. That's since been followed up with more reporting, I think Friday or Saturday, from Nicole as to what the framework of this alliance might be, even though they haven't formally come out and said it. We don't even have a name yet. I mean, I think on the internet, people are trying to call it like the Pac-Lantic or something like that, the Big Pac-Lantic or something. We can workshop that. But this alliance on the surface doesn't really seem much more of... It just seems like a... showy is the wrong word to use, but it's almost like this. Well, we got to look like we're doing something. So here we are with this alliance.
I mean, I know what you're saying, but I also think, I mean, there's a lot to be worked out in terms of how this could look because of some of the TV restrictions, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit more interesting, I think, from the ACC's point of view, because they're the only ones that are in bed with ESPN right now. Like the others are not. And so it becomes a little more interesting, I think, from that point of view, because I wonder if ESPN's kind of like, hey, what's this all about? You know, and so I think that does make things at least a little bit interesting because it's like, okay, I think that all the other leagues, though, understand what the reality here is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is that if this goes forward this way, they're all going to be making probably, you know, in the ACC's case, like half of what the other league makes. And, you know, in the case of the other teams, significantly less, you know, and that's even with the Big Ten renegotiating pretty soon. I think they're going to get more money and they'll be okay, but they also understand that they'll be at a distinct disadvantage on several fronts, right? And I think the only way for the other leagues to sort of push back on what's going on is to sort of flex any limited power that they have, even if they don't quite know what that looks like yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I kind of blanked out there because I was trying to think of who would be Chewbacca in this alliance. You know, who's the Admiral Akbar to tell everybody it's a trap going in with ESPN, that kind of stuff. Although, what's the group in Harry Potter? Because I guess that's the other alliance too. What was the name of the group that Harry Potter formed or like rekindled?
Oh,
It was the name of a movie. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
the Order of the Phoenix?
The Order of the Phoenix. Maybe that's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to create their own Order of the Phoenix. Look, all of this comes back down to money. It always comes back to money.
Yeah.
So the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 can talk about how they're philosophically aligned as conferences, that they want to be more to the collegiate model than not. And that includes name, image, and likeness and other things to modernize college sports, but they're still believers in the college athletic model.
Right. They are. Yeah. They have the most similarities in the sense that they all care about Olympic sports. They all at least pretend that they care about academics to a certain degree, yada, yada, yada. Right.
All those things make sense. I'm not dismissing that. I know that there are some people who are watching this, maybe even some administrators that are going, yes, no, these things matter to us.
Yeah.
I'm not dismissing that. However, there's one thing that ultimately drives all of these decisions, and it is money. And that was my curiosity when the reports of the alliance first started to come out last week. And I thought to myself, well, if these new, and this is another important distinction, these are new conference commissioners in the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12.
Yep.
This is not the old boys club that have all known each other and even have connections back to Carolina, like John Swofford when he was the commissioner of the ACC, or Jim Delaney in the Big Ten. And I think we started to see fractures in this kind of attitude last year when none of them could agree what to do with the pandemic and whether they're going to play football or not.
I think we started seeing it actually even before that, when the pandemic first hit. And the conference commissioners kept telling us, oh, we're all on the phone with each other, you know, during basketball.
And they weren't.
Oh, we're talking all the time. And they were all doing different things and making different decisions and trying to one-up one another when it came to this stuff. It was nonsense.
And the SEC with Greg Sankey was the final nail in the coffin of this idea that everybody's working in concert for the betterment of college athletics. Greg Sankey gamed it. And look, SEC people could tell you all day that, oh no, they're innocent. They were just kind of looking at the landscape or whatever it is. No, that's exactly what they did. They looked at a power vacuum in college athletics and they took advantage of it. They took advantage of the Big 12 being weak. Notre Dame was on a college football playoff expansion committee that benefited them. The SEC doesn't expand without college football playoff expansion because it makes Texas and Oklahoma's move to the SEC more appetizing because they can lose a couple of games and still make the college football playoff. All these things are tied together. And in the aftermath of the college football playoff expansion, with Texas and Oklahoma moving to the SEC, I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, Kevin Warren, the commissioner of the Big Ten, and Kliavkoff, the commissioner of the Pac-12, I'll get that name right eventually, all kind of looked at each other going, wait a minute, we just got duped here. Like, they're not helping us. They're not helping college athletics. They're only helping themselves, which also ties back to ESPN and the money. And this is all that, what I was just kind of laying out, leads up to my point. Sorry for the long lead up, but I feel like this requires a lot of freaking context for people to understand. What has been created in SEC expansion and the college football playoff is a potential window to renegotiate television deal in 2026, right? So, and this is something that Nicole Auerbach pointed out, but it was also something that I pointed out, like in writing, but it's something that I alluded to last week when all these things were kind of coming out. It would not surprise me if all the other conference commissioners, presidents, and ADs looked at the relationship with ESPN and went, holy crap, the SEC and ESPN are going to have a monopoly on college football. Straight up. They've got an incredible amount of investment in the SEC. They are business partners at the end of the day. With the expansion of the college football playoff, they can drive conversations that leads to more SEC teams being in the college football playoff. They can put Feinbaum on TV like they do every other day, like they did today, to basically give SEC talking points.
And that's the big, and that was already happening.
That was already happening before all of this.
Right.
So you have the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 going, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. And unlike the NFL, where you have 32 owners working collectively for leverage to expand their bottom line by by basically creating competition for their television rights, and they split them up with NBC, Fox, ABC, ESPN. That doesn't exist in college football, and ESPN's been gobbling up all the property, and they've actually just invested a big time in the SEC. So that window in 2026 matters because the Big Ten's deal with television networks runs out around that time. The the ACC is supposed to see it. My understanding is they're supposed to see an increase in what they get from ESPN starting around 2026. A lot of that has to do with the old Raycom deal and who gets to broadcast what games and who's buying out what from whatever remaining inventory. You can get in the weeds in that, but again, my understanding is that the ACC is going to see a sizable increase in television revenue that comes from ESPN directly. Meanwhile, the Pac-12 is trying to do its own thing. So I can envision a scenario where these three conferences are going, okay, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't be giving all of our inventory to ESPN. Maybe we should take a page from the NFL and create more TV inventory with other networks, or more specifically to the college football playoff. Hey, why don't we, like the NFL playoffs, give playoff games to Fox or NBC, and then also give some, like the championship itself, to ESPN, or like they do with the Super Bowl, rotate where these games are. College football fans aren't idiots like the NFL. You'll figure out where these games are on television when it's time to watch these games on television.
Well, although it's funny, one of my first thoughts was actually to that whole like Bally Sports nonsense this past year, because it ended up being a thing where, because the ACC still has some of these existing Raycom deals, there were some games that were on Bally that people couldn't watch. Yep. So I don't necessarily advocate that, by the way, just so we're clear, because I don't think that's good for anybody involved. If people can't see your actual games, I think that's bad.
Sure.
But as long as like most people can figure out a way to get it, and now that Comcast is getting picked up, ACC Network, like that will be the case. But and I think it puts the ACC honestly in kind of the toughest spot of all of the leagues, because they already have this relationship with ESPN and they're kind of dependent on it. But ESPN, to me, has made it clear for a while now that their main priority is the SEC. I mean, do they really care? Do they care if the ACC fails? Like, do we think that they do? I don't know that they do.
No,
And
they
so
got a
I
pretty
think
sweetheart deal with the ACC.
well, and that's what I'm saying. So, like, for me, I think that that's where Jim Phillips needs to figure out what's, he needs to figure something out here, because right now, I think the ACC is in the most, danger is maybe the wrong way of putting it, but it is kind of dicey that they have this relationship with ESPN, that they're clearly the second favorite, and it's going to stay that way for a while. And there's no way out of it right now. So
it was a deal that was made for survival. And I think it's important to understand where things were when these deals were being made and how things have shifted in the landscape of what people decide to watch and invest their time in. So I never really had any problems with any of these things. It's easy for us to sit here in hindsight and say ESPN and ABC or the ACC should have done different things. But
it made sense at the time. But I don't think nobody actually thought, I don't think, and I'm trying to be careful in how I say this, because I know I have friends that work at ESPN and I know they don't feel this way.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of us thought that, like, let me put it this way, especially when they said that they were going to do ACC and SEC and, potentially show other games. I don't think any of us thought that they were necessarily going to go quite as hard in the paint, as they did.
Yeah.
Like, to us, I think people thought, okay, well, they're going to have a financial interest in both. They're going to continue to be objective, blah, blah, blah. But that's just not how it's shaking out at all.
It's not how it's been shaking out. What's funny, too, is that I know that SEC people were petty and jealous about the fact that the ACC network was going to be based in Bristol, Connecticut, as opposed to what was going on in Charlotte, as though they were getting some sort of advantage with talent and everything else. But clearly the investment's been the SEC. But one real quick thing about why all those things made sense at the time, and it helps explain why the ACC is in the situation that it's in as the landscape has changed. 3 factors. The first one is the ACC was typically the first mover in these situations. They were the first mover in expansion. They were usually going first in television negotiations, which helped set the tables, like quarterbacks, right? Oh, this quarterback got this much for that production? Okay, well, that sets the table for Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, et cetera, right? So the ACC kind of helped set the table for what the Big Ten was going to do and the SEC was going to do. Sometimes being the first mover is not advantageous because all you do is you set the market. But then there's the market at the time. When they expanded the first go-round, cable was king, and you needed homes. And you went into markets in the Northeast corridor that had a lot of cable homes. Nobody cares about Boston College necessarily in the city of Boston. Nobody talks about them on sports talk radio in Boston. But there's a lot of homes in Boston, and that was the point. Get in as many homes as you possibly can. Like you brought up Comcast, right, for the ACC network. That's roughly 19 million homes. Not that they're going to get all 19 million homes, but that's more homes than before, and every little bit helps with subscriber fees. And then the same thing happened in the wake of Maryland leaving and the grant of rights and securing the future of the ACC. That's why that deal through 2036 ends up happening. You might, as you put it, you might be number 2 in ESPN's eyes, but at least you know where you stand, and you at least can survive until 2036, because that glue of the grant of rights is going to keep you together. And Swofford also made the right moves to make sure that Notre Dame, if they are going to join a conference, ends up with the ACC. So all of these things help make you understand why the ACC is in the position that it's in. Now the question for Jim Phillips is, how do you go about ensuring the survival of the conference going forward? And maybe this alliance is a bit of a gentleman's agreement between the 3 conferences. Look, in the aftermath of the Big 12 and the SEC, we're not going to poach anybody during that time. Hey, maybe we can do some sort of scheduling agreement that helps increase the value of our television deals that we don't necessarily give to ESPN. So there are some financial aspects to this that can make sense.
Yeah.
But if you think that this alliance is in some way, shape, or form going to try to wrestle back power from the SEC, then I do think that you're sorely mistaken.
No, not necessarily that. I think that right now this is just sort of a way of like, hey, let's figure things out, because we can't just let this go forward and not at least, like you said, be attempting to try to do something to get some power back.
Yeah. You know what we get back next week?
College football?
Like actual college football talk. Very excited about this.
I know.
About time. Actually, I had one UNC fan tell me yesterday they had a bad feeling about that Hokies game to start week 1. But
I understand.
We'll see. No, I totally understand where Carolina fans are coming from on that. But we'll actually talk about that next week as we start to look ahead to the start of the college football season. We'll see you then.